More results to discuss from election night. California voters approved a ballot measure known as Prop 50 that will set new congressional boundaries in the state.
Now, the voting result is being considered a victory for Democrats, as it's estimated that the party could gain up to 5 seats in the House in next year's midterms. Voters passed the measure overwhelmingly, with more than 63% voting yes. As of this morning, the proposition will allow the state to bypass its independent redistricting commission for 2026 in favor of the new, more Democrat-friendly map.
Now, California is of course, the nation's most populous state with 52 representatives in the House. This ballot measure comes after the second biggest state, Texas, passed its own measure in August.
The new map in Texas, which was strongly urged on by President Trump, is expected to give the Republican Party a similar advantage in the midterms. But Trump expressed outrage over California's Prop 50, writing on Truth Social, the unconstitutional redistricting vote in California is a giant scam in that the entire process, in particular the voting itself, is rigged. All mail-in ballots where the Republicans in the state are shut out is under very serious legal and criminal review. Stay tuned. And conservative commentator Colin Rugg accused the voters of hypocrisy, writing on X, despite passing Prop 50, which just stripped power from California's nonpartisan commission, 92% of California voters say that district lines should be drawn by a nonpartisan commission. Are people really this stupid?
But California Governor Gavin Newsom says last night's victory sends a strong message from the state of California. Here he was speaking after the proposition was passed.
Instead of agonizing over the state of our nation, we organized in an unprecedented way in a 90-day sprint. People from all over the United States of America contributed their voices and their support for this initiative. We stood tall and we stood firm in response to Donald Trump's recklessness. And tonight, after poking the bear, this bear roared.
Clever. I mean, redistricting and gerrymandering didn't start with Texas. It doesn't end with California. This is not a good, ideal move for either party to continue on. I think we should look at the census and figuring out ways to get that as accurate as possible, which helps us decide when redistricting is necessary. Gavin Newsom is obviously campaigning to run for president and is a direct response, as he says it, to Texas by doing this, which does kind of balance out the amount of people or seats that are acquired by both parties. And so he is doing something about it. And what Democrats have called major Democrats to do is do something, not just sit back. And if they complain so much about President Trump taking this office again, what is going to be the response? And he's been the person most vocal, I would say, about his response. And so whether you like it or not, he's, again, doing something.
Yeah, while I don't think partisan gerrymandering and redistricting are good ideas, as you note, you can't really claim in this case, in fairness to the Democrats, that they started it. What kicked off this most recent flurry of redistricting efforts was what Texas is going to do. So if Texas is going to do it, then California can do it to just mitigate the effects of Texas. I think the better idea would be for both states to just not even bother, because can't we just do mutually assured destruction and stand down here? Now, Republicans did not, first time ever redistricting. Illinois is horrifically gerrymandered. So is, I believe, Massachusetts. So are a number of states. Both parties have an incentive to maximize their advantage in states they control. The result for the American people is catastrophic, because the parties have a mutual interest in making the districts maximally safe, and so that they're not so that you have districts where Republicans are going to win anyway, Democrats going to win anyway, and they can agree. They're like, well, in that district, the Democrat wins. In that district, the Republican wins. In that's safe for us. That's safe for you. We all agree. We all shake hands on that. The American people lose because then they don't have competitive elections. And in fact, you're more likely to get extremists in both parties elected to Congress, because even though the median voter is somewhere in the middle, if you've carved it so that all the Republicans are in one district and all the Democrats are in the other, you've made it so you're going to get a very liberal Democrat and a very conservative Republican, whereas if it was more evenly split district, then you get someone in the middle. I think it's not good for democracy, for civility, for the tone of our politics, but also Republicans will say this, and I agree with them, nonpartisan redistricting committee. The word nonpartisan XYZ, I always go, Is it really nonpartisan? What does that mean? How?
But they have an independent commission in
how do we make it
California.
Who decides?
But I think the difference between, let's say, what Texas is doing and what Gavin Newsom pushed forward with Prop 50 is that they did include people. They allowed them to vote on it. If they would have voted no, it wouldn't have happened. And he said, I'm leaving it up to the people. I present this to you. Would you like to redistrict? And even though I don't think that it's the best idea to keep going back and forth between
they
states,
asked a majority Democratic state.
They still
would
asked.
you like to eke out more Democratic representation in Congress?
But they still asked.
Surprise, surprise. The people said, yes.
Okay, so if you put it forward, if Texas does the same thing, then they can just figure that out in the same way. I think at the very least, he's like, I'm giving it to the people of California. And if the people of California felt like you and I, they could say, no, we think we should stay as is. We already have the majority. We're already a Democratic state. What are we doing? I think. But if we step back and talk about this whole lead-in that we got to this point about the wins last night, you brought up earlier that if President Trump was on the ballot, perhaps Republicans would do better. I actually think the exact opposites. I think that Democrats poured millions of dollars into ads connecting a lot of the Republican candidates, whether they wanted to be or not, to President Trump. And all these wins were a direct response to this Trump fatigue that happens when people are just exhausted already of 9 months of just a lot of what feels like chaos. And people are responding to that. You know that there's a higher turnout when Trump is in office by Democrats and by independents. There's just a
higher turnout by Republicans too.
when he's on the ballot, though.
Right.
So if he's not, the question becomes what is the party's next plan? Because J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, they're still not President Trump, right? President Trump is this anomaly of a figure that's moving forward. And we talk about the future of the elections, specifically looking at the midterms. It's kind of like, well, what's the messaging for Republicans? Because as they continue to infight, we just did a segment about Marjorie Taylor Greene. You did your radar several times about what's happening with Fuentes and people trying to connect him to Charlie Kirk and what the problematic issues with that would be. What does the party look like moving forward as Democrats have the same issue to decide? We always pick on them and say that they're lost, and I'm one of the people that say that after Kamala's lost, but it seems like Republicans have a lot of work to do without Trump at the helm of the party. Yeah,
that's absolutely fair. I've mentioned that earlier in the show. It's always going to be rough for this is an off-year election. Mostly what happened took place in blue states, so we don't have to succumb to any kind of fatalism. We'll see. The midterms will tell us a lot next year. If Democrats retake the House, that will say something, because again, Trump won't explicitly be on the ballot, although it will be to some degree a referendum on his performance. I mean, he's unpopular right now. His poll numbers have come down. His unfavorabilities are very high. What he's doing with respect to tariffs in particular is not popular and is having effects on the prices of things that is tanking the agenda, in my view. I really wish he would give up that fight and concentrate on the other aspects of his agenda, even ones I don't agree with, like on some of the immigration stuff, that is popular. But I think it's the economic thing. I mean, it's the economy, stupid. We know that. That's the lesson over and over again. People revolted against Biden because of high prices, because of inflation that was downstream of COVID-era spending. We were going to get that under control, I thought. The problem is the tariffs, it's hurting prices. And you got to fix that policy. And then I think Republicans might be looking at something different, because in these races, that's a top concern. In Virginia, in New Jersey, in New York, ask people what's their number one issue. It's not the East Wing demolition. They didn't even know about that. It's the prices. It's inflation. And Republicans promised to do something about that. Not enough has been done yet. And something they consciously chose, a fight they chose, in my view, tariffs.
And we can look at what Mamdani does in New York. And if he handles it and gets it under control, it's not going to really look great for President Trump and his agenda.
No way that...
You don't know what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to watch this test case of somebody.
Well, what I expect to happen is he will fail to implement his socialist policies and things will mostly be fine.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Stephen Colbert is speaking out after his late night show was canceled by CBS. We'll be right back after this.